Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked. Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Broadcasting from high atop the frozen Misery Ozarks. 4 degrees. 4 degrees this morning here in Misery. Jason's engineering the broadcast in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. Rich Scheben's with us. Welcome, Rich Scheben.
Well, thank you, buddy. 4 degrees, wow. I think during the top of the hour break, I'm going to go down to the river and take a dip.
Yeah.
It's a heat wave here.
What is it there?
It's 27.
Ah, sounds
I'll just bring
balmy.
a towel and some soap and be good to go.
You know, I was thinking this morning about, our lifestyle, yours and ours, and, we have some choke points. Like, what would be bad? Well, if we didn't have electricity, we wouldn't have heat. And if you didn't have electricity, you wouldn't have what? Water, right?
Not even that, because I have a generator to pull up my water. I had a choice when I built my system, which was almost 13 years old now. So when I built my off-grid system, we didn't have the technology that there is today. For example, the wattage on the solar panels wasn't as high or strong. We didn't have inverter chargers up to 240 volts. The solar chargers, the amperage wasn't as sophisticated, couldn't hold as much, including the breakers. So the technology, especially with the battery choices now, has increased probably threefold regarding off-grid living, and it's just amazing to me, Vince, with all the talk we've done and all the corruption, all the manipulation, and the little people, the bottom 93%, losing control of their destiny, why we haven't even had close to a 3% increase in off-grid living. It should be a 50% increase in off-grid living so people could have a decent life, learn skill sets. And I'll tell you, for those of you who think that you're lonely, I guarantee you if you live off-grid, especially write a book, you will not be lonely, because everybody in the world is going to want to see how you do it. Because people are looking for plan Bs. People are desperate for outside-the-box ideas and solutions because the whole system is so corrupt. It's basically it's controlled opposition. Too many people think that, it's a left-right paradigm. It couldn't be furthest from the truth. It's good cop, bad cop. It's basically aristocracy managing the serfs and using political correctness as a tool where there's no benevolence, equality, fairness, tolerance. But all political correctness does is lower the bars of standards and expectations for certain groups, and especially for jobs, and demonetizing the people who speak up against it. Just like last week we talked about adult mutual consensual sex, and I want to open up that can of worms, but it's so obvious, Vince, that the elite are using sex as blackmail against everybody from lawmakers to Congress, and they're normalizing pedophilia, they're destroying families, and this is why we can't allow certain groups to demand concessions through entitlements, because when you rationalize and justify hate against another group, you're basically allowing the powers that be to remove the incentive, the value, the legitimacy, and the dignity of work, never mind the rule of law. So as competition becomes eliminating, as the powers that be designate winners and losers, how can the little people control their life regarding food, regarding savings, regarding wealth, regarding every aspect of controlling one's own destiny? Because the system is protecting the elite so they can hold on to their addictions of power, money, and control. And more specifically, they're using basically allowing the big corporations and government via self-interest for the wealthy to eliminate our choices and opportunities. And as we become more and more silent majority and don't speak up, we're enabling the double standards and hypocrisies of the powers that be to continue to distract, dumb down, and divide the American people. And they have great tools because of their wealth has been increasing so much. We now have a plutocracy with weapons like the technocracy, where too many people are bought and paid for, again, for their self-interest, to eliminate humanity, objective facts, common sense, logic, rule of law. So we really need to start not just thinking outside the box, folks, but we need to relearn those lost 19th century skills and dovetail them with 21st century technology. We need to have the balance between technology and nature, and we're losing that. They're turning the people into monolithic, one-dimensional thinkers. And when you do that, you can control them and put them in the followers category. And as you can see, we're moving more towards whether you call it socialism, communism, tyranny, whatever the case is. It's pretty obvious when you import your manufacturing to a communistic country like China, especially technology, censorship, surveillance of the U.S. and its people are going to continue. And communism, totalitarianism, all this stuff is wealth enhancement and welfare for the rich to give the little people as basically crumbs so they can be controlled. You know, it's just like this pedophilia thing going on. Vince, I gotta say, if this Epstein declassification does not occur with thousands of the wealthiest people in the world, especially here in the U.S., does not get, if a discovery does not happen and a declassification does not happen, I think this is the one litmus test for American courage. If we don't disclose these thousands of names, our culture, traditions, heritage, history, it'll all be taken away. And this is one of the reasons why President Trump needs to create our own intranet. Because, I mean, we're getting to the point where, God, I just had an article right here. December 10th, 2019, the day that YouTube dies. And who is YouTube owned by? Google. The outdated, basically they're allowing for a termination of any Google account deemed not to be commercially viable. So this is, again, a hit on free speech. This is a hit on the little people trying to grab a microphone and control their own destiny. And this is why President Trump needs to create, and Russia's done this, I believe, an intranet. Basically, it's an internet that's inside the nation, so patriots and thinkers and outside-the-box ideas and solutions can trickle down to the people so they can have a good, happy life instead of increasing opioid use, meth use, drug use, obesity, all the suicides going through the moon, all this despair. The little people is not getting the information. They're just getting the propaganda, the lies, the false flags, and the hoaxes. And it's basically a huge dumbing down of the American people, not to mention the dividing and distractions going on. Vince?
You know, as you're saying this, I was thinking about something we talked about months ago, and that was, it's going to be a cold winter. And some people thought, nah, because the mainstream media said it's going to be just average. There's no change. Well, we are frozen here in Missouri. And I was thinking about the cows. And a lot of people in Missouri raise cows. So if it's this cold, if it's 4 degrees, the streams, the creeks are going to freeze over. The animals are not going to be able to get water. We're talking about wildlife. We're talking about livestock. We're talking about domestic animals that, are outside. It's going to be tough. And so what we have to do is break the ice. And we'll take a fence post pounder, and it's about a 20-pound piece of steel with a flat end on it, kind of like a bugle, if you will, but small, maybe 3 inches in diameter, on a real heavy rod. The other end is a pry bar, and this thing is like 6 feet tall. And we use that to pound in the dirt around fence posts that needs to be packed in. And we'll take the pointed end and we'll pound the ice when the ice is on top of the cattle waterers, the ponds, and try to give the cows some water because they'll die without it. And I was thinking about all this, and then all the people who are dependent on electricity for water, for their wells. They're dependent on electricity for their heating of their homes. They're dependent on electricity for everything. And what a great time for the grid to go down. I mean, people will be dying all over Missouri and in this Arctic blast area that we happen to be in at the moment. And the news is saying, global warming. What global warming? We're not talking about global warming. We're talking about violent climate change. That means really hot and then really cold, and then really hot and then really cold. That's violent climate change. So the twist of words, the misuse of words, the global warming, and the GDP would say, what global warming? Well, it's violent climate change. And that's where we are right now. So 4 degrees here in Missouri is unseasonably cold. It's unseasonably cold in lots of places. And at least, 20 to 40 records have been shattered today in terms of ultra cold. So I wanted to mention that. And when I mentioned that the choke point for you would be water or electricity for running your well pump, we all have the same problem. So it's electricity, but how you generate it, whether it be solar or wind or hydro or generator, and we all have the same problem if we have wells. And now you're fortunate because you don't have any need for electricity for heat. You can run your wood cook stove without any electricity at all. None. But we can't. We need electricity to run our wood furnace. So the choke point for us is, one point is electricity. And of course, we've got lots of ways of generating electricity. We would need 75 watts in order to heat the house. And that's nothing. And we could do that with an inverter, or a spare inverter, or a spare inverter hooked up to a truck battery. So we'd be good for a while. Or we could use a gasoline-powered generator, or we could use a diesel-powered generator, or we could start the car or a truck and run the engine, and the alternator would charge the car battery or the truck battery, and we'd use an inverter to provide enough electricity to run a heating system. And that's just for life, sustaining life. That's all that does. But, class, think about it. What would happen in your neck of the woods if you lost power for the next, 12 hours? Would the pipes freeze? It's likely they would. We'll be right back. So, class, those of you who have been with us for a while know that Rich Scheben lives in Montana and we live in Missouri. And we each have farms. And we both heat with wood. So, Rich, during the summer when nobody's thinking about heat, we're thinking about, wood for heat for the winter. And what we noticed was there was very little interest in people getting wood, and there are plenty of places where you can buy scrap wood. And we would buy it by the trailer load, or we have a small trailer. It holds, it's got 3,500-pound axle, and we can pull it behind a pickup truck, and we'll fill that thing up. And the wood's free. People can't wait to get rid of it. Those are in the wood type business. They can't wait to get rid of it. And all summer long, it's free if you want it. All you have to do is show up, load it yourself, and drive away. And yet, hardly anybody wants it. So during the summer, I say we got close to 50,000 pounds of wood that nobody wanted. Now the neighbors are looking at our wood pile. They're kind of like, where'd you get the wood? And I really believe that it's going to cause problems. And so what we've done is we've said, oh, so y'all don't have wood? No problem. So we'll haul our wood over to them and give it to them. Now, eventually, it's not going to be so much fun because they're going to be dependent on us for delivering wood. So why is it? Why is it that they didn't think about it when we thought about it? We think about it all year, literally, to make sure. And we told our neighbors, yeah, we think it's going to be a rough winter. It just feels like it's going to be just a brutal winter. Well, TV doesn't say that. Well, I don't know about that because I don't watch TV. But we actually believe that it's going to be brutal. And if this is any indication of what we have right here, right now, today, it's going to be brutal. So we have stockpiled 3X in hay, literally. We have stockpiled 3X in wood. And we have stockpiled 7X in spare parts for our heating system, 7X. The weak link in our heating system, it's a hydronic system. So we have an outdoor wood boiler. It holds about 400 gallons of water. So what happens is this huge firebox, which is 4 feet by 5 feet inside dimensions, heats. There's a water jacket around that firebox, about 400 gallons. And so the wood fire heats this water jacket, or storage tank, if you want to call it that. And then there's a circulator pump that pushes the water underground to the house where there's a heat exchanger. And so the heat is extracted from the water, and the cooled water returns back to be reheated. And so there's a pump that does that all the time, 24/7, 365. And they wear out because they're running at about 175 degrees all the time. They don't like that. So even if you buy the best pumps, they wear out in a couple of years. So what I did was I found a guy on the internet that was selling them for $78 for a top-of-the-line brand pump with 3 speeds, low, medium, and high. So I bought 7 extra pumps because I know that when things get bad, they're going to be $1,000. And I know that we're going to need them. And I know that I can't make them. So that's where we're parked. But, with Rich's system, he doesn't need any of that. Doesn't need any electricity, doesn't need any pumps, and doesn't have any water to worry about. So, 2 different strategies, class, and you ought to think about them because they're both excellent. They really are. It depends on what you're trying to do. But you've got to have wood. And there's one other thing I wanted to mention, Rich. That is that farmers in the Midwest are finding out right now that there is a difficulty obtaining propane. Difficulty in obtaining propane to cure and dry the crops, like corn. And they have these huge, huge propane tanks. When I say huge, I'm talking 5,000 gallons and larger. And they're having trouble getting enough propane to dry the crops that came in late. And it seems like there's a mad dash to get the crops dried. At the same time, homeowners, 50% of rural homes are heated with propane. And we told you months ago to get yours, did you? We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us. Offgridmontana.com. Offgridmontana.com. Just talking about heating and how important it is and why you should get what you need before you need it, and also why you should consider getting the wood that you need for the winter in the summer when no one's thinking about it. And it just doesn't apply to that. I buy T-shirts for use around the farm in the winter. I buy long sleeve shirts for use around the farm in the summer. I buy things when no one else is thinking about them. No one else wants them, and the price is low because no one else wants them. There's not a lot of demand. Rich Scheben, your thoughts on that?
Well, what you're describing, Vince, is basically foresight thinking. It's grasshopper or ant strategies. You know, it all depends if you want to make life harder on yourself or easier. If you want to make it easier, you gather your wood year-round, and it doesn't feel like a chore. I mean, I know people personally who, go out and bust their back for 3-4 weeks out of the year and just do wood, and it's miserable for them, and they hate it, and it's a big chore, and half the time they get injured. You know, I've visited a lot of off-grid homes over the years. I would say at least, and I'm being very gracious with this number, I'm lowballing it, at least 200 off-grid homes or homesteads. Everybody does it different. You know, I know people who have had experiences with pipes freezing, so they build their house different with angles so the pipes angle down so they don't have to blow the pipes out, and they can literally just open up the faucet at the end and it gravity feeds the water out, and they're done. You know, you could live with a gravity feed water system like me. I know people who live on hydro. Here we are, November 12th. I have not had to run my generator for solar yet this year, and we're basically a little over a month from the shortest day of the year. I urge people to really think outside the box. You know, we have a builder here in town, and every valley in the country has it now with the new technology. They're building buildings now indoors, and this guy has a flatbed truck that could pick up almost any building. In fact, any building that he can build, he can pick up, he can twist it, he can maneuver it, he can angle it, and he delivers his buildings, and he does buildings up to 40 feet long. Now, my cabin, long end, is 40 feet. My log cabin is 30 by 40. You know, it's not huge, but it's very comfortable. Now, where I'm going with this is, I know so many people who think they're doing it the easy way or the inexpensive way, and it turns out to nickel and dime them to death. First of all, when they buy a house that's existing, you're usually buying somebody else's problems, okay? Whether it be the piping, the electricity, the hot water heater, the pressure tank, the heating system, their water system, whatever it is. I really recommend, and I know what people are thinking right now, well, I can't afford to build my own house, it's too expensive. Well, this is what I recommend people do, especially with 80% of people living paycheck to paycheck. My recommendation is to buy a piece of land, which is a hard asset. Buy some acreage, enough acreage that you can build a garden, you can put some fencing up, have animals, you have a wood lot, a.k.a. free heat, and use the renewable resources that we have in this country. And it takes a little elbow grease, if you're going to be sitting in front of your television and smartphone all day long, this isn't a lifestyle for you. But if you want to control your own destiny, you want to move around, you want to build skill sets, you want to show other people how it's done, this is a great, great lifestyle. So anyway, what I would recommend is you go to one of these builders. They build sheds, they build garages, they build barns. I've mentioned this on the air before, Vince. I bought a garage 20 or 24 feet long, I can't remember now, for $6,700. $6,700? I know people who spend more than that on vacations. Many people. So you build yourself a building, they deliver it. You have a choice of putting it on a slab, you can put it on a foundation, you could just put it on the ground. And then you can insulate it, you can put in gravity feed water, you can put up your solar panels, and then as your fiscal situation improves, if it does, you can turn that into a guest house or a garage or a barn or a storage unit, whatever. The functionality of the building never goes away and always adds value to your land. But this way, you're not spending $300,000-$400,000 on some type of subdivision home where you're inheriting somebody else's problems and you don't have any privacy. And your taxes and insurance are so ridiculously high because that's we had 91 months in a row of increased home prices in this country, and that's mostly urban, suburban. And the taxes and the insurance are going up with it, while the average American wages or value of dollar because of inflation is going down. Savings is going down, and debt is going up. And the only solution that I can think of for the bottom 93% of people is to move to the country and buy a piece of land and then have one of these builders build you a cheap home. You insulate it, you put in your stove, and all of a sudden you're living in it, okay? Where else are you going to put your money, folks? If you let's say you buy a bond that yields 5% over 30 years, the bondholders are going to lose principal if the interest rate just rises to 2%. Okay? I'm just saying that we're in a position where there's so few options. And you got to look at we're in a deflationary, stagflationary environment. But are rates going to increase because of economic growth, legitimate economic growth, or which could be good for stocks and equities? But what if rates rise because of inflation, because of printed money, because credit's collapsing, because they can't sell bonds, so they got to make the bonds more, they shine a little more light on it. That's called collapse. That's called a system that's totally corrupt and manipulated. Look who runs the system. It's the central banks with Keynesian economics. We've talked about this for hours. I've done shows on this personally when I've monologued. Our banks have been caught rigging all the markets: silver, gold, treasuries, forex, LIBOR, the VIX, the volatility indexes. It's not a left-right paradigm as much as it is the aristocracy controlling the serfs. That's why I call what we have as a plutocracy, where the wealthy class is controlling all government, all corporations, especially the big ones, from the top to feather the nests and bail out all the big boys, and the little guy ends up holding the bag, holding the bill. I just don't see sustainable headwinds for future rates of growth when we're at the end of an economic cycle that President Trump inherited. So I just see, when you look at who's getting the benefits, I see the subsidies, the money printing, the special interests, the lobbyists, the PACs, all going to the big boys. And they're creating more robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and the technocracy is creating more illegitimate means for the little people to control their own destiny in the forms of the technocracy censoring and surveilling the little people. So I don't see, personally, things getting better. I see Donald Trump, who inherited a very extreme corrupt system. I've talked about it in great detail, how they're putting money out of thin air, using fractional reserve lending, and I've talked about, Vince, I know I've talked about it when I've monologued, but you've heard me talk about stock buybacks in great detail and how corrupt the whole system is. Basically, new debt for the executives, and they're basically bypassing new employees, new products, new services, new expansions, new purchases of land. It's almost like they put up a finishing line where they can see a light at the end of the tunnel for themselves, but not for the little people. So this is why, I really recommend people thinking a little differently, because I don't know how long this phony system is going to last. The fact that Donald Trump is here as president is the only reason the system has basically not collapsed. So we have to start thinking outside the box, because self-interest of the elite is what runs the system. It's unbelievable. These people basically tell us what not to do, and everything they're doing, they're saying us not to do, they've done. All this corruption with President Trump, or against him, it's a total joke. I mean, here we have, well, I just want to remind people, remember Obama got caught on a hot microphone telling the Russians that he would have more flexibility after he wins the next election? And they called President Trump collusion, treason, and sedition, when all that and more, including espionage, has been bought and paid for by the Democrat National Committee. Trump reads aloud 2017 tweets from the so-called whistleblower declaring a coup back in 2017. You just can't make this stuff up. And I'm sure most people in this audience has now heard that there's new evidence confirming Kentucky election fraud. Everything from attacking getting names from the Department of Motor Vehicles database to add to voter registration, to illegal immigrants, people voting across county and state lines, people voting multiple times, dead people voting. You know, we talk about a lot of stuff, but I'll tell you right now, folks, there's no sense in being optimistic at all if President Trump does not fix election and voter fraud. I mean, the whole system is totally corrupt. You know, whistleblower's lawyer claimed to have gotten security clearance for guys who have had child porn issues. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Everything that they're telling us not to do, they're doing. It's absolutely insane. They're just, and half of it, or 90% of it, they're making up. There's no evidence. They don't want to, they don't want the legitimate side to call witnesses. It's unbelievable. So, Christine Lagarde really summed it up last week. I didn't have time to say this last week. I'm going to quote her. We should be happier to have a job than to have savings. Folks, they're dropping breadcrumbs for us to connect the dots and telling you that you will not be able to control your own destiny. We have to think outside the box.
Can you imagine, class, not having savings to weather a storm, to pay your small bail if you've been arrested? Last couple of months ago, I mentioned that we buy propane when no one's thinking about propane. August is a good time. It's hot. No one's thinking about heat. Propane prices are at around the lowest they will be for the year, typically. There's some bumps in pricing, but typically they're lower in August than other times. And so I did some pricing, and I was able to buy propane, and it came out to $1.11 per gallon. It was $1.19 per gallon, $1.19.9, but we got 25 gallons free, and the price to top off the tank came out to $1.11. And there were specials on propane, and there's a new company, and you could buy it for $1 a gallon. I know one of our instructors bought his at $1.11 a gallon also. And I just checked today's price. So 2 months later, the price of propane has increased 31% in the Midwest. So average price in the Midwest is, it's actually $1.48.6. I'm sorry, $1.486. And in Missouri, it was $1.46. So, word to the wise, and it's probably a little late now to get it, but as it gets colder, people go, hey, we got to check our propane and see if we need any. Or if you have an automatic delivery, they'll take care of it for you. And do they fill it up in the summer? No. Why would they do that? They fill it up when the price is much higher. Now, the propane delivery companies buy it or lock in when the price is low, and then they sell it when the price is high. So you can take a page out of their book and buy it when the price is low. That's what we do. We try to buy everything when the price is low. Everything. And actually, I think we have an allergy to paying too much for anything. So that's just a thought. Rich, do you use propane for anything on your farm?
I just put in a vent-free heater as a backup. You know, as I'm getting older and my arms are getting weaker, I just want a plan B. It can't be used as a primary heater because it's vented free. It's non-vented. So it does work for, you know, putting it on for 2-3 hours here and there. It's great for early fall, early spring type thing. So it is nice to have. So I have a 500-pound tank here. However, you know, I look at it, I certainly prefer, I mean, if there's a gas station, let me give you an analogy where the one across the street on the right is $5 a gallon more expensive than the one on the left, I'm going to go to the one on the left. And, of course, price matters. However, I think it depends on a lot of other things, too, because sometimes propane tanks in the summertime, you don't want to fill up past 80% because of expansion of gas. So in the winter, they can squeeze a little more in there, or late fall because it's not as hot. So it all depends on what your philosophy is. Do you want to fill up once a year, twice a year? Are you on regular fill-ups? But like my gas analogy, Vince, I don't really pay attention too much to the price. And it's not that I want to pay more. It's just that if I need something that's absolutely mandatory, like gasoline, I'm going to get it. You know, I'm going to try to get it when it's cheaper because of seasonality or certain promotions or marketing or whatever. But there's so much collusion with gas stations anyway. There's not much of a difference in specific areas, you know. So I look at it, if I need it, I'm going to get it. If I can't control it, it's not like I can, you know, drill my own gasoline and refine it. So I am in, you know, I have to buy it from someone else. So as the year progresses, you know, throughout the year, I don't really pay attention that much because I need to fill up my pickup anyway, and that's my philosophy.
There was a propane delivery company just outside of Springfield, Missouri, and they offered to their customers a lock-in price. So during the summer, they would send out these advertisements saying you can lock in and you can buy it for $1.79. This was a few years ago. And a number of the people who are in the Springfield area that we know that would come to the meetups locked in. And they'd buy 1,000 gallons, and they'd pay for 1,000 gallons in advance. So that 1,000 gallons was on hold for them, at least they thought. And then there was a propane shortage. And the delivery company who they locked in and paid their $1,790 for 1,000 gallons of propane said, y'all need propane? No problem. We'll get you 100 gallons at a time, but you're going to have to pay for it outside of that locked-in price that you already paid. You'll have to give us a new payment at $4 a gallon. So the company that took the money said, we are not going to honor our agreement. We'll only give you 100 gallons at a time, and you'll have to pay for it in advance, on top of the locked-in price that you already paid. So, Max's law, okay? Pay cash, take delivery, and buy the best. That's Max's law. We'll be right back. Rich Scheben with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, one of the things that was one of the things that we were going to talk about today, the Catholic Church and its hospital system called Essentia, and Google's secret project to gather data on the patients of the hospitals within the Catholic Church system. Is that something that you were going to talk about? Hey, did I lose Rich? Huh.
No, sorry, Vince, I'm here.
Okay.
No, I don't have specifically that article, but we've talked many times on how big tech, including Google, is harvesting our databases to basically divide the American people, to get information on us, to sell us useless stuff, and to mostly the reason why, here's an analogy. They want Donald Trump's IRS tax information because they want to see who he did business with. Because he wants to, what the powers that be want to go to colleagues, business associates, people who have done commerce with him, people who he knows, and they want to basically check their databases to see what crimes they might have done so they can blackmail them to basically say, oh, Donald Trump raped me, oh, Donald Trump swindled me, or Donald Trump did this. It's the same thing with the database of healthcare. It's the exact same thing. They are basically trying to demonize, discredit, delegitimize, and take advantage of the people. So that's their they're using the technocracy against us. So there's so many examples here. I have an article here that 100 examples of federal taxpayer abuse. It's truly incredible. So I'm going to let you talk about your article, Vince. But if you want me to talk about,
well, let me just mention this, and then we'll go into the tax abuse. So Google and a company called Ascension Health System, which is a Catholic hospital system, they've colluded to gather information about patients. And Ascension has patients across 40 data centers in more than a dozen states. So Google is working with the hospital system to get information about you. So here's what happens. It's called Project Nightingale. And a patient checks into a hospital or a doctor's office or a senior care center, and the doctors and the nurses examine the patient, input data into their computers. This will be radiology scans, hospitalization records, lab tests, medications, medical conditions, and so forth. And, of course, the name, date of birth, address, family members, allergies, immunizations, that all goes into the system. And it flows right to Google's Project Nightingale system. So, allegedly, Google is trying to help. They're trying to help with treatment plans, suggested tests, flagging unusual deviations in care, replacement or addition of doctors to the patient's team, additional enforcement of narcotics policies, and billing. So this is just the tip of the iceberg, and I just found this, and it's so alarming. I don't have all the information in front of me, but Google is working with the hospital system of the Catholic Church to learn more about you. Another word for learn might be spy on you, with the permission of the hospital system, without the knowledge of the doctors nor the patients. This is secret. This was secret spying. So what do you do in a case when the Catholic Church does something like this? Well, the first thing you do is you do not donate to the Catholic Church. Okay? Any giving, tithing, whatever you do, passing the plate, you do not need to improve the weight of that plate by donating, because you have been sold out. You've been sold out by the Catholic Church. So that's it for me. I haven't been going, and that just seals it right there. I have no intention of participating in genuflecting ceremonies involving priests, cardinals, monsignors, bishops, the Pope, the Vatican. Nope. It's over for me. This was the final straw for me. And probably the rest of my family as well. That doesn't mean we don't believe in God. That just means we're not going to participate in organized genuflecting. No midnight mass for Christmas. No New Year's mass. No exchanging the sign of peace, which means shaking hands with people you don't know, probably don't even like, who are sitting around you in church. None of that. They've crossed the line. They have crossed the line working with big tech, corporate technology to mine information. I'm not interested in participating anymore. And this has frosted not just me. It's disrespectful. It's the Catholic Church's hospital system making money, more money, off the little people. So that's kind of it in a overview. We need to find out more. We need to do more research about this, but it's called Nightingale, Project Nightingale. Big tech, Google, and the Catholic Church's healthcare system. And we used to use the services of St. John's, and I didn't like it. It was really kind of nice when we first moved here, but it changed and it changed and changed, and it got to the point where I didn't trust St. John's. And this is in, two hospitals in Springfield. One is St. John's, and the other is it used to be called the Sisters of Mercy, and St. John's, and now it's just Mercy. And they use a stylized cross. It used to be the Sisters of Mercy. Now it's big corporate healthcare. So we no longer use that, and we have not used it for years. And when my father died in the hospital, I got a message from my father's doctor, a recording on our answer machine. Quote, "Sorry to hear about your dad." End quote. Not "I'm sorry." Not "This is Dr. Fleesom calling to say my sincere condolences about your dad, my patient. I'm sorry he died." No. Sorry. It's enough for me. It's enough for me. So I now look at the Catholic Church with even a more jaundiced eye. I am even more cynical because I've been trained to be cynical by corporate America. I wasn't born cynical. Nobody I know was born cynical. It's something that we've learned. So, and you see those pink trash cans. Breast cancer awareness, pink. And people pay extra for that. Here in Missouri, people pay extra for those pink trash cans because they want to contribute to breast cancer awareness. The truth of the matter is, there is no contribution to breast cancer. Anything. It's just the trash company charging more for the pink cans. Another fraud. But they don't say, "Hey, look, y'all, we're just going to charge you more because we know you like pink." No. They don't tell you that. You just assume that. But it's another way of deceiving you. Class, I am not going to contribute to any organized anything. And I haven't for years. Not the Boy Scouts. Not the Girl Scouts. Not the Red Cross, of course. No big anything. Not the Catholic Church. Not the local Baptist church. Nope. None of my money is going to big corporate America. And these 501c3s, they're corporations. They're not getting my money. Rich?
Well, Vince, it just shows that we have no representation, protections, or restitution under the law. What I mean by that is the little people, the taxpayers. And this is why I go through a lot of these articles to show that the system has protected themselves, protected the elite in the form of a different tiered system of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in. What it does is meant to divide the people at the populace level, at the little people level, at the bottom 93% level, however you look at it. But the little people ends up paying for all this. You know, here's an example. I have an article right here off of Zero Hedge. National Science Foundation pays to put running shrimp on a treadmill, $1.3 million to taxpayers. Lobster tail and snow crab purchases, $25.4 million. Mistakes and improper payments distributed by 20 federal agencies, $1.5 trillion. Dead people receiving mistaken improper payments, $921 million. Expensive coffee cups from the Pentagon for $1,000 for a single cup of coffee. Living expense tax deduction for members of Congress, $1.6 million. Mistakes and improper Medicare payments for $491 billion. And, of course, Elizabeth Warren wants to spend $52 trillion on free Medicare for everybody, including illegal immigrants, and she can't even do the fraction of the fact that she's 1,024th American Indian, which is less than pretty much everybody listening to this show right now. Sex education for prostitutes in California, $1.4 million. Heck, the prostitutes, the hookers, should be given the sex education. 2020 student loans estimated bad loss, $17 billion. Grounded moon rocket cost overrun, $2.79 million. Use it or lose it spending, $97 billion. Preparing religions for discovery of extraterrestrial life, $1.1 million. I'm not making this stuff up.
Yeah, we'll be right back. Rich Scheben with us, offgridmontana.com. Rich, I found something I'd like to read. I normally don't like to read on the broadcast, but this is a thumbnail sketch of Project Nightingale, which we've been talking about. It's from Wikipedia. Project Nightingale is a data-sharing project financed by Google and Ascension, a Catholic healthcare system comprising a chain of 2,600 hospitals, doctors' offices, and other related facilities in 21 states with tens of millions of patient records available for processing healthcare data. Ascension is one of the largest healthcare systems in the United States with comprehensive and specific healthcare information of millions who are part of its system. Google is involved with Ascension to process this data, which began in secret sometime in 2018 without knowledge and consent of patients and doctors. The work they are doing appears to comply with federal health law, which includes robust protections for patient data. The project is Google's attempt to gain a foothold into the healthcare industry on a large scale. Amazon, Microsoft, and Apple Inc. are also actively advancing into healthcare, but none of their business arrangements are equal in scope to Project Nightingale. The data sharing includes patient names, their dates of birth, along with doctor diagnoses, lab results, and hospitalization records, amounting, the microphone is in the way of the screen, amounting to access to complete medical records. They also include data sharing addresses of the patient, family members, allergies, immunizations, radiology scans, medications, and medical conditions. After the patient checks into the doctor's office or hospital or senior center, the doctor and nurse examination results are entered into the computer, and the data is instantly streamed to Google's Project Nightingale. At this point, the system is then used to suggest treatment plans, recommended replacement or removal of a doctor from the patient's healthcare system, and administer policies on narcotics. The Ascension, the company sharing data with Google, may also vary their billing according to the treatment and procedures. Patients and doctors have not been apprised. Ethical and technical questions have arisen 150 Google employees are allowed access to much of the data on millions of patients. The project is controversial because Google has paid large fines for violating privacy laws. So that is what Wikipedia says, and a little bit of further research says how many patients are involved? 50 million. That's 1 out of 6 people in the United States, roughly. 1 out of 6. That's what the Catholic health system and Google have done, without your knowledge, nor your permission, nor your consent. And when I was going to get eyeglasses at Walmart, I wanted to use the glasses that they suggested that I keep to read the screen. So I said, they were processing, they were looking at, hey, these are really great glasses. And I said, I don't think so. I don't want these. I'd like to, tell you what, let me look at your computer screen and see how they work on your computer screen. I could not see the computer screen because they have a special filter that has a very narrow viewing angle. So narrow that if you're sitting next to the person on the screen, you cannot see the screen. This is at Walmart. This is to protect the patient's privacy. I can't even see my own screen about my own glasses at Walmart. So I had to actually ask the lady to turn the screen to face me, exactly straight on face me, so that I could see the screen to see if I liked the glasses. What I'm telling you is this alleged privacy, we can't share information. You can't know about your loved one in the hospital. No, you're not on the list. Yet, in 21 states with 50 million patients, Google has instantly been sent that information by the Catholic healthcare system known as Ascension. What an outrage. So, you can help the Catholic Church by shutting down every single one of your weekly, daily, monthly, annual contributions. You don't need to go there anymore. You don't need the Catholic Church. Rich Scheben's with us. Rich, you can see where this thing with Google's going. Not only are they collecting information about us and storing it in the cloud, they are recommending treatment and billing. And it kind of looks like, heck, we don't need doctors as much, maybe for surgery, but heck, we can have Google figure out, if we're okay or we have any maladies, because Google is so smart and they've got the data already because we've been sold out by the Catholic Church and its healthcare system. I wonder what the Pope has to say about this.
Well, let me tell you something, Vince. It's basically controlling, managing, and fleecing the public. If there's a username or password, just forget about privacy because big tech owns it. And, it's what's scary about that is whether it be a diagnosis or an injury that's debilitating, they can just make it up. They can do anything they want, and they can say they have more authority and credibility than the system. And that will affect someone's job. That will affect someone's health insurance. And it just shows that the little people are losing control of their destiny more on a daily basis. And you got to be part of the club to get the certain subsidies, grants, special interests that's running the whole show. And let me just mention a few other of these grants and subsidies regarding that's fleecing the taxpayer. Where it hurts the most to be stung by a bee, $1 million. I'm not making this up.
I already know that. I already know where it hurts the most.
Yeah. Subsidized lending to Wall Street bankers, $12 billion. 36,000 federal lawyers gets $14.3 billion. IRS purchase of 4,600 guns and 5 million rounds of ammunition, including 621 shotguns, 531 rifles, and 15 machine guns, costing the taxpayers $15.5 million. Luxury artwork purchases, $20 million. Study that Are physician trainees racist? Almost $1 million. Preventing teen pregnancy through theater, $750,000. I can go on and on and on. You know, it just shows, see, we have a different tiered system of rules, laws, and accountability based on what group you're in, what victim group status you have, and mostly what protectionist group status you are. And when I say protectionist group, I mean the aristocracy. They can do anything. You know, I just want to mention, we're running out of time, Vince. I just want to go through a few more articles to show how we have a different tiered system of rules, laws, and accountability since we went there. Sanctuary County frees illegal alien accused of sexually abusing an 11-year-old girl. Tucker Carlson says, remember when Bill Clinton openly asked Tony Blair for a public favor, a political public favor, okay? Hillary Clinton basically pressured, Ronan Farrow claims Hillary Clinton pressured him to kill the Weinstein story. All depends on what group you're in. What a coincidence. The same month, Biden fired prosecutor looking into his son and Soros' dirty dealings and threatened to withhold $1 billion in aid was the same time frame that Glenn Simpson hired Christopher Steele, May of 2016. What a coincidence. Joe Biden worked with whistleblower when he was vice president, officials reveal. Senator who employed Chinese spy, and this is Dianne Feinstein, endorses Joe Biden for president. You can't make this stuff up, folks. Obama State Department colluded with Russian embassy to target Trump. See, all these things that they say for us little people not to do, or the Republicans not to do, they are doing it. New York firm indicted for selling Chinese spy gear. Flashback. Pocahontas, you know who she is, Elizabeth Warren from the Hiawatha tribe, couldn't calculate a fraction of the 10th of her ancestry, and I mentioned this earlier, but yet she wants us to trust her with a $52 trillion plan, which makes absolutely no sense. Voters in Los Angeles approve a scheme for the city to spend $1.2 billion on housing for their homeless at a cost of over $500,000 per unit. And explain this to me, Vince. Traces of testosterone. U.S. woman's tennis star was suspended because she had traces of testosterone in her blood. So does that mean if you declare that you're trans or you're homosexual or you're something, it's okay to do it, but it's not okay to do it when you say that you're normal. And speaking of normal, tell me if this is normal. Delta to show unedited gay scenes on in-flight films after celebrity outcry. You see, folks, you know, this is why we talk about practice what you preach laws. If we had practice what you preach laws in every context, from political correctness to financial, economic, social, and political issues, we wouldn't be in the position we are now. But we have allowed the powers that be to manufacture perception. We have allowed them to divide us by skin pigmentation, gender, sex, religion, ideology, generation, and race bait the whole way. We've allowed them to sway public opinion by holding on to the narratives. And if you don't become submissive, you're going to be called a racist, bigot, sexist, misogynist, homophobe, intolerant, violent, hater, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why we need us little people to stand up. We need to stand up for principle. And I know I say this often, but principle should be defined by three simple things. Rules, laws, and accountability need to be the same for everybody. Now think about laws. We actually have separate system of laws depending on what group you're in. And the second criteria is truth. If everything's propaganda, lies, false flags, and hoaxes, why even communicate? Why listen to this radio show? The mainstream media is 100% lies, propaganda, false flags, and hoaxes. They're 100% actors. They're theater. And I think when we no longer have representation under the rule of law, the only thing left for the little people to do is, if someone has less consequences for their behavior because of what group they're in, then you get to do it too. And I don't mean violence against people. I don't mean pedophilia. there's certain things that should not be done because it is against the rule of law. But when we give exceptions to people because of their aristocracy, a.k.a. their money, their wealth, their influence, or their skin pigmentation, their gender, or the gender they identify as, or their religion, or their sexual orientation, then there's no, it's eliminated everything that America stands for. It's eliminated the competition. It's designated winners and losers. It's just protecting the big corporations and big government. And this plutocracy, technocracy combination is only feathering the nest of people in certain positions for self-interest. So we've removed the incentive, the value, the legitimacy, and the dignity of work along with the rule of law. And the little people must stand up against that. That's why we do these radio shows. That's why there are people out there called patriots who are sticking up for the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, which especially is freedom of speech, where the powers that be want to eliminate that. It's so important that we read and research. It's so important that we see through their templates and their Marxism and Alinsky and the Frankfurt School and Cloward and Piven. They're all making us drunk on the Kool-Aid of political correctness so they can increase government interventions, austerity, confiscation, redistribution of wealth from the little people to the big people, and use group identity politics as disguises for so-called benevolence and doing the right thing, and they're doing the exact opposite, because everything that they say that the Republicans are, or conservatives are, or patriots are, they're doing. That's why I mention these articles, folks, is so we can wake up, smell the coffee, and realize that this PC drunk on Kool-Aid is destroying us. And we're not going to have any freedoms or liberties left. We won't even have rule of law. It's going to be only by rule of group. And we need to stand up to that. Vince?
Did you say homophobe?
Well, that's what they call us. Racist, bigot, sexist, homophobic, conspiracy theorist, intolerant, violent hater with an anti in front of every word, and istrophobia on the back of every word. That's what they do. Yeah. That's how they try to break our will and make the people submissive.
Well, I admit I'm a homophobe.
you know what? I know we did that last week, buddy, but this is one of the reasons why I talk about adult mutual consensual sex, is because the kids need to be protected. And the elite, like I mentioned earlier in the show, they're using sex as blackmail to not only blackmail Congress and the CEOs and all these people. That's why the Epstein declassification absolutely has to occur. But they're destroying families, they're normalizing pedophilia. Just like you were saying about the priests and the cardinals earlier. I mean, look how many of these people have gotten caught doing little boys and even sometimes little girls. I mean, when a little child goes through that trauma with somebody that they trust at a authoritarian level, and they think they're being protected, the odds are that child is not going to be normal later in life because they've either been raped when they were young. It's part of the controlled opposition. A lot of these people who end up doing certain things that you don't like, Vince, I'm not trying to protect them, but there's an answer that's very appropriate to most questions in life today in America, and that is, it depends. A lot of these people are doing, drugs or, whatever behavior because they've been abused when they were young and they didn't get protection. And it's mostly from these pedophiles. And if we don't, like I mentioned, the litmus test for America is going to be if the names of the Epstein perpetrators come out. If they don't, if thousands of names at the very top does not come out and be revealed, I think that the lack of declassification will be the litmus test for not only American courage, but our freedoms, our culture, our traditions, heritage, and liberties. I think they will all be taken away. I think if you had to put one finger on one thing, even though we've said hundreds of stuff over the years and talked about many different types of declassifications, not just uranium-1, the Clinton Foundation, and the FISA warrants, and geoengineering, and weather modification, and 9/11, and alternative energies, and all the documents related to Barack Obama and the billions of dollars of cash going to Iran. There's a lot of things that need to be declassified. But I think the most important thing in America right now is the declassification of the pedophiles. Sex should be adult, mutual, consensual sex. If people want to get their freak on, I think people should be at least adults. At least. I think that's minimum qualifications. And then we need to protect the children.
We'll be right back. Rich Scheben's with us, and I see we have a caller. I don't know who. We didn't answer the phone, so I just answered it live on the air. Are you calling for USA Prepares?
Hello, Vincent. It's Robert in Kansas. I just wanted to talk to Rich Scheben about the way that these people work, the people who are pushing these agendas. So what they get you to do is they get you to agree that adult, mutual, consensual sex is okay, homosexuality, and then it's just a process of then taking that to the next step. So when you find yourself accepting this idea, I don't want to go too far and tell these people, they can't love each other, stuff like that, you have to realize what you're dealing with, Rich, and it's just a matter of getting an approximate, position, like in the military, you get one position and another, then another, and you just keep progressing where, incest would be adult, mutual, consensual, but then you would then have to start defining incest, and that would start to go into, a child born to the parent at this age. Anyway, they start to get you to accept things like that, Rich, and I want you to know that there's right and wrong, good and evil, and you just have to pick a side. And so if you know that, something's wrong, even though you don't want to hurt people's feelings, it's still wrong. And so you have to approach it that way and realize that these people have an agenda, and they're gonna get you to accept this, and then it's just going to be the next thing.
Oh, Rob, I don't disagree with you or Vince on that. I'm just telling you that I agree that they use incrementalism, which is what you're kind of describing, as a strategy and a tool to bring us in a little more and a little more and a little more. I'm just saying, when I say adult, mutual, consensual sex, we have to make people realize that our first emphasis needs to be in protecting the children, because this pedophilia stuff is going overboard. It's over the top. And the elite are using sex as blackmail against so many people, from Congress to CEOs to so many. I mean, they have a bimbo fund. I think just recently they might have gotten rid of it, or it might be hidden now, since the 90s, for people, mostly women, who are blackmailing Congress. And it's not just women who are doing it. It's women from maybe other countries, maybe spies, who are blackmailing people. So they have this bimbo fund that the taxpayers pay for. And there's so many people who their lives have been lost, Robert, like from these pedophiles who have gone after these children who are doing some of these behaviors that you're talking about. And what I'm trying to say is sometimes it depends. The answer, it depends. Because if some child was abused sexually by priests or cardinals or pedophile rings or so many different people, the odds of them growing up and having a normal life or a normal outlook is so slim. And I just think that the domino effect through incrementalism, through the Frankfurt School and all these, that's why I mentioned Marx and Alinsky, a lot of it is sexual deviation in order to control the populations. But when kids are being used in their lives and their behaviors act out when they're adults because of the abuse that they've gotten with trauma, I think it needs to be addressed. And I think a good start is to protect the kids. But I do think that sex should be adult, mutual consensual. I don't think this should be rape. I don't think women need to be tied down or beaten or blindfolded or handcuffed. I think it should be consensual, but I don't think that children can say sex is consensual because they don't have the information, they don't know, and they're getting sexualized by our public tax dollars. And I've seen the video, I've seen the pictures where drag queens are being subsidized, not just in this country, but in other countries, in public venues, paid for by the taxpayers, where these drag queens are literally opening up their crotch, showing their junk to children without any cover to sexualize kids. And I think
the only way that's possible, Rich, is that we've accepted perversions like homosexuality, where these drag queens can walk around as homos, and it's the weakness of our society and men like myself and yourself, and I'm sure Vincent in the past has been weak, but we got to be strong, and we got to say this is right and this is wrong, this is good, this is evil, and homosexuality, it's wrong. Like Vincent says, it's just period. You can't get married. You can't have it's just not right for two men to be together or two women in that way. And if we call that out and say no to that, well, then it strengthens our position against all other perversion, whether it's pedophilia, which is a type of perversion. And what the pedophiles are going to tell you, Rich, is that you've accepted these other forms. You need to accept us now. It's a matter of incrementalism. It's how they work. It's their psychology. It's how they work. And I want you to know that in terms of the war that we're in, is that you have to be rock solid in what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, we're rock solid.
I don't disagree, Rob, and unfortunately we're out of time for me to go into more detail and specificity, but sounds like we'll be talking about this again in future weeks.
Yeah, we are rock solid here, and we are not weak, and we are going to hold the line against this perversion. Robert, thank you. George, I'm sorry we didn't have time for your call. Rich Scheben, thanks so much.